Hello, everyone. Welcome on Pluton Football. We are very happy to welcome you to our very first webinar. Tonight, we are very happy as well to welcome Alain Meyer and Jayson Leutwiler. And we would like to, Guillaume and I, thank you very much for coming tonight. So all the guests, this is our first time. So of course, we didn't know what to expect very much, but we are happy to see that a few of you are here tonight. Welcome, Alain. Thank you very much for being here tonight. This is with great pleasure. Briefly, you've got a master in psychology. You've got a master in coaching. You've worked 10 years as a sports psychologist at FC Basel. And you've worked 11 years being self-employed as a sports psychologist with various athletes and teams, and as well in coaching executives, employees, and teams in other organizations. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Perfect, amazing. That's what I wanted to hear. So much pressure on me tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, there's one very important thing, because I'm also very happy and proud to work with the Swiss national team, women's national team. So that's very, very interesting and a very cool job. And I really love to work with the girls, and we reached quite a lot already together. So that's, perhaps you didn't mention that, but I think it's also really cool and interesting to talk perhaps a little bit about the work with the girls, So that's also quite
All
cool.
right.
But
thank you for making up for my mistake.
not a mistake. So
all right, thank you very much. And Jayson, yeah, you are a professional goalkeeper, Canadian international. You are a product of FC Basel. There's a lot of Basel tonight. You've played in other various clubs in Switzerland before moving to England. You've played at Middlesbrough, Shrewsbury, Blackburn Rovers, Fleetwood Town, Huddersfield Town, and today you are playing at Oldham Athletic and National League. You've done and you've obtained a bachelor in sports science, and you are currently doing a master in sports psychology. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
I can breathe. All right. Thank you very much. I think we are all ready, guys, to start the conversation. Agree, Guillaume? Yeah. I don't know if you want to add something. Thank you again, Jayson, as well for being here tonight. So my first question, so as we said, as you could see everywhere, the topic of tonight will be psychology in football. We'll try to be pretty broad because it's our first time together. So we need to sort of define the context, define the whole area before diving deeper into more precise questions, I think. So my first question is to Alain, the expert. How would you define sports psychology in football? Like, how would you define psychology in football?
oh, that's very hard to define, like, in a few words. So for me, I can tell you how I see it. For me, I'm very motivated to work in the field with human beings, because I think everybody is like in sports, and everybody wants to achieve goals and is under pressure. And I think at the end, sports psychology is about perhaps like getting some strategies, plans for being very ready, or being or being able to perform on your top level under pressure, like. So that is a little bit my how I see it, but it's so hard to explain, because the field is so big, So I think at the end, my motivation the last 10, 15 years is like, at the end, okay, it's being in the field in sports, but also being able to work with great human beings, So, and I think every human being in this sports deserves to have some tools and strategy, and also deserve to be very kind to himself, and to be able to perform on in every situation. So that's why, so it's very hard to describe it in a few sentences, like, yeah.
I think it's a pretty nice definition to start with. Huh? My next question for you is, how do you work with athletes? And when I mean how do you work is, do you have a process in place, or do you have a special or specific methodology you use with athletes?
So honestly, at the beginning, when now I'm a little bit more experienced, but at the beginning I was more like in a plan, like okay, I came from like after studies, and they had like okay, this step and this step and this step. And now it's a little, I changed a little bit. So now I just see the whole human being as a person, but also as an athlete, and I'm trying to be very open and to team up with the athlete, and to give him or her space to be yourself and to work on different topics, so back to your question, I don't have this clear strategy. So for me, it's just very, very important to be 100% here for the athlete, so because sometimes the danger is for when you have like this mental plan, like a lot of men, I know a lot of mental trainers, they work with, okay, now I do this and this and this and this. It is for me totally okay, but it's not my way, because it's dangerous, because then you're not with the guy, or with the girl. So for me, it's very important to be 100% with the athlete, because only with that, in this way, just speaking for me, it's possible to be open and to be, as an athlete, to be heard. Because at the end, an athlete, they want to be heard, they want to have the space to reflect, they want to have the space to be themselves, and I try to be, as a sports psychologist, to be here and to try to understand and support the athlete.
That's very, very interesting. And I just want to say, of course, I'm saying it's for you, it's your question. I'm asking this question specifically to you. But Jayson, if you want to add anything, please intervene. Same thing for Guillaume. The whole goal is to make it a big interactions. So just bouncing back on your very interesting answer. How do you mentioned human beings and athletes? How do you connect the two, basically? How do you maybe separate them, but how do you connect them as well?
Yeah, what I learned from my experience, sometimes like people, we like, let's say some fans or people, they are not really belonging in the system, they see the footballer as athletes, which is totally fine, but behind every footballer there's a human being, and I think that is very important, so and I mean, with a human being, it's not a machine, so every human being has emotions, thoughts, uh, things going on, sometimes they're very happy, sometimes they're things, yeah, I mean, life is not always about being happy, so sometimes you have to manage very difficult and stressful situations. And I think that this is just, you don't have to forget, when you're working as a sports psychologist, that is always the human being, not only the athlete, because sometimes we are like, okay, this athlete he's paid and he have to perform, but at the end, they are all humans, and I think for me that is so important. To when I work with somebody, it's also my philosophy or my values, to respect, to appreciate, like every human being or every athlete, how he is, and I think that is for me one of perhaps my secrets. Perhaps Jayson have to help me after, but I think it's for me, it is so important to create this trust, when I talk about, for example, like our work with Jayson, because it's about a lot of appreciation, about a lot about understanding, and a lot about respect, so that is for me the thing which I mean when there's an athlete and a human being, so that's always together for me.
It's really interesting because you mentioned trust. This is something I was planning to cover a little bit in a few minutes. So if that's fine for you, we will leave it there. I just trying to reflect on what you're saying and taking a few seconds to let it sink in, but um Like, of course, you as the sport psychologist, when you welcome your client, obviously you may know that this person is an athlete. This is maybe probably the first thing you know about that person. How do you open the human being side? Like, what tool do you use? Or because literally, if I'm your client, I'll be sitting on the chair in front of your desk. I don't know the whole context and setting, but you get me. One thing about me, I am a professional athlete, but then how do you open the box for the rest? How do you literally start your approach?
So for me, the most important thing is to be natural and authentic, like so I'm not a journalist, I'm not going to start the conversation with the athletes about like, hey, how do you play? So okay, of course, it's always important the playing part, the sports part, but it's always for me at the beginning, I'm not 100%, I'm not even interested in sports, I'm interested in the human being, like family and how he lives and like the background and things he loves to do, because for me it's about having a chat at the beginning who is very natural. So that is perhaps also a little bit experience I have now with all these years. So I really try to be myself. Often I start a conversation also perhaps with I share some private stuff from me, and I share some not only the good stuff. I also share like the perhaps the stuff I still struggling, So that is, for me it's like so for me it was the whole process being this sports psychologist is like first I was like very like okay I have to do this and this and this, and now I became just to be, hey, I'm a human being as you, we are now a team and we try to make you better, but I know I'm also struggling, so we could also change the seats, like now the thing is I'm professional, I know a lot about psychology, but it's about creating a natural space. If not, there is no trust, there is no, so it's just about that the athlete can be himself or herself, because often we have this role in high performance sports, so like now I have to be strong, I have to be ready, I have to be this, yeah, but when I talk to an athlete, you don't have to do this at all. So you can show emotions, you can be frustrated, sad, happy. So all this, the whole thing, I'm interested and motivated to meet the person, not only the athlete.
That's very interesting. I think you're emphasizing the fact that you're trying to put yourself literally on
Exactly.
the
So
same level as your client.
so important.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, also Jayson, it's very interesting what Jayson is telling us after. But I think it's when you feel as an athlete that the sports psychologist tells you like, hey, you have to do this, and that is true. So this is for me kind of fake, Of course, I know a lot and I explain my ideas and I try to share what I think, But at the end, it's I have my ideas and I always offer them to share, But at the other hand, it's like my work is about sharing a space, being open that you also can create your ideas, And of course, sometimes we work on tools, on strategies, on like sometimes athletes they have like, hey, this situation, you have to help me. We have to figure that out. How I want to behave in this game because now it's a very important game. I don't know next weekend and it's very hard and I'm a little bit like I'm struggling a little bit and then of course then it starts to be very interesting because then first I try to understand the athlete, to try to not to judge him, just to be open and to ask him, hey, okay, that's crazy how you feel, or very interesting. So now let's try to find a solution together, So that is like the work I'm very passionate about.
I'm just thinking right now, but in a few words, what's the most common problem you're facing with a client? Like, what's the big question they're coming to ask to you and say, please help me?
Uh,
Generally.
So it is very hard. So because that's why I love my job. So it's so different, you know. But often it's about handle the pressure, you know. So it's like
Okay.
so because on this level, so you have to be ready when it counts, you know. Like so it's mostly like the trainings, they're good, they're nice, you know. But then boom, then you play in front of a few thousand people, and it's there is journalists, there is media, and blah, blah. So you feel judged, you know, in a way, you know. You feel this pressure, and of course you start to think, to feel, and when you don't have these strategies, so then your thoughts they love to go to ways they are perhaps not the best ways for us, you know. That's why we have to be prepared. We have to have plans. We have to know how we want to perform in these situations. So often it's um, about this pressure situations, you know. But it could also be like that an athlete have a problem, a private problem, or like a problem with a teammate, or like with the coach, or so that's why it can be very different. But mostly it's about okay, being ready when it counts, you know. So yeah.
All right. My next question is, without saying the name for obvious reasons, but do you have the example of a client with whom you worked and with whom you've seen like a big evolution, positive one, from the start till the end or till today, if you're still working with that person? Like one big anecdote, you know, without sharing too much.
It's for me, sharing anecdote. It's like it's just for me. It's so motivating to work every day with people, because I'm so deeply. I'm so convinced. I know that this mental work, it's so important. So I can tell you now the whole evening about um, people. They adapt, they use tools and strategies, and they get better, you know. So for me there is not one story, I just see it. So you know, I'm always happy when I see or when an athlete write me back and say, hey, that worked. So I felt great. I don't know, I performed with a lot of confidence, and I was quite calm, you know, and quite sure what I'm doing, you know. So all these little things, you know, for me these are big things, you know, like because with these tools and strategies, I think it is so crazy how different we can perform, you know. So it's just sometimes I see athletes, they say like, yeah, let's see how what it yeah, I will see perhaps after the first action, or perhaps I don't know, then perhaps I'm good. Or I see the athletes when we worked a few things out, that they say like, hey, I didn't want to wait for my first action. So you know what? I was ready from the beginning. You know, I knew what I want to, who I want to be. With, I don't know, on the level of thoughts, on body language, on having a plan. So I was just very ready for performing. You know, so
Yeah.
that's why for me it's hard to say like, okay, this is this big story, but I just see on daily basis that athletes tells me like, hey, that was really cool, this worked or this not, here we have to adapt, or here we have to find a new strategy. And that's the work I love, you know, because everybody is different, but I know for everybody there is a solution.
That's a nice line. Finally, before involving a little bit Jayson, because I can see you waiting for your time. Alain, what are the differences between working in a club and as a private practitioner, if I can say so? So being self-employed, what are the main differences?
Cool. That is like, that's a topic we could talk one day about it, not only an hour, you know.
Okay.
No, for me, honestly, I have to say, I worked like in Basel a long time now with the women national team. So there is always advantage and disadvantage, you know, like so because um, for me the most important thing is about trust. And when athletes they don't know you, so for example, I can share perhaps a little story in Basel. There was I started to I was already working a long time in the youth in Basel, and then the coach Raphael Vicky, he wanted to take me to the first team, you know, and that was like, okay, so cool. Of course, I followed him, you know, and but at the beginning it was very hard with these professionals, you know, because it's about trust. So they didn't know if they really can trust me or not, you know, and so first they were checking me out, and they was like, okay, and I thought that's perhaps a little bit easier, you know. And of course, every athlete thinks a little bit in football, okay, who can I trust, you know? And of course, they didn't know it that I have the, how you say it in English, I have a secret as a psychologist, so I can talk about things I talk with athletes, you know. So, but of course, still you think like, oh, he gets paid from the club, so he's in the same system. But at the end, it was really cool. So because I remember there was one thing after Mati Delgado in Basel. He was a very famous and good player, and I think I can share this story. He tell when he was a staff member after his career, he told me, you know, when I knew that you're this guy and I can trust you, perhaps I would have talked to you a little bit more, you know. So, and he was so open to me. He said, like, at the beginning, every player was thinking like, oh, is he going to tell stuff to Vicky or not? Because he's very, very like tight with him. But of course, it was never the case, you know, because I take my job very seriously. But that's perhaps like not always easy to work in a system, because now when I work with all the footballers, like as an external person, you know, so then perhaps they trust a little bit more, or they can be very, very open because they know I'm not in the system. But at the other hand, when I talk about my experience with the Swiss national team for women, so they are so open, and they trust me. So they talk about the coach with me, and so that is for me like at the beginning I was like, oh wow, that went fast. You know how they opened up very, very fast, because perhaps they also knew a little bit the culture about sports psychology, you know, like so. But like I said, there are always advantage and disadvantage. I can even tell you, I don't know now at the moment. I'm very comfortable to be an external psychologist, but you can never know in your life. Perhaps I work again in a club in a year or 2 or 3, perhaps not. So I don't know. So, but at the moment, I have the feeling that like I feel very comfortable how I work, because often I have this outside role, you know, like or this external role that you just can be yourself, and the athlete doesn't have to think about okay, where who belong, so is he get paid from the club or not? So all these things that you don't have to deal with it, you know, like. But like I said, you can't generalize it, so that's why I could talk
a lot about it.
a lot about it. But now let's stop now.
Maybe for another webinar session.
Exactly.
Perfect. Thank you for your answer. How much have you evolved? Can you tell us more about your journey, maybe, and give us, in order for people and listeners to understand, 3 main takeaways of the whole journey you've been through and you're currently going through?
Well, first of all, that people need to know is that I worked with Alain for 13 years now. We have been, I was 20 years old when I stepped in his office for the first time. And I can bounce on something he mentioned before with the trust. Obviously, I remember going there, you don't know what to expect. Maybe now he has developed more, you maybe know more about it, but at the time I didn't know what to expect from him. I remember having one session with Alain, and then I wasn't 100% convinced, and Alain said, come again, we'll have another chat, and then see, it clicked, and we finally worked for 13 years together, which is pretty amazing. And to come to Alain's ideas, saying like we were not just talking about football, it comes from everything. You talk about literally everything. It becomes more like a friend, a good friend, you know. And he has developed for us because we have working for so long together. We always text, etc., which is good. but yeah, basically, the biggest three things I would recommend is obviously probably trust that person. But if at the same time, if you do not feel it, then don't go for it, don't force it. I think people get better than with others. With Alain, it clicked with me. Maybe if I would have go to another sport psychologist, then it would have worked better with him. I don't know. But like at that point, I felt that's the right person for me. So I would say you must feel good with the person you're working with. Second of all, will be trust the process. Be very patient. It's so I would say the brain is such a slow muscle. It's like it takes sometimes I don't know, one exercise you'll be able to do it within like 5-10 minutes and feel great the next day, etc. But some other exercise or so, or the more I would say issue you have could take months or years to fix it. So the patience is massive in that aspect. And a third one, hopefully it worked, but I would say if it doesn't, I would say like you need maybe to try something else. I've never met anyone who said like it hasn't worked for them, but I would say don't force it into something. I would always say you need to go with the feeling, similar to before with the psychology. I would say you have to go with the feeling and liking what you do it, because maybe some psychologists offer different methods, and the same, if you force the methods in a way that you don't like it and it don't seem to work, then you don't get success what we're looking for really. So I would say be patient and also work with that motivation to do with a psychologist.
I'm gonna create a little mess possibly between you and Alain. I hope your relationship is strong. No, I'm just kidding, but I'm gonna ask a tricky question. Like, why were you not convinced after the first session 13 years ago?
Do you know what? It's so long ago, so I don't remember. But what you have to think, maybe when I was like 18, 19, you'd think, oh, I don't need a psychologist. Why would I? You have a bit, maybe your mind is a bit closed. And I had the luck that I met an agent that obviously suggested Alain to me. And just before I met Alain, I was doing the Swiss Army. And in the Swiss Army, they were suggesting to do sport psychology. And already there, we had somebody, he came, he did like a team session, which is way different than a one-on-one session, really, really different. And I wasn't really keen on it. And then when my agent suggested, I went, maybe you go a bit close mind and you're like, I'm not sure. And I didn't say no. I just said, oh, I don't know. I'm not too sure. And then Alain said, come again. And we really talk again and see how it goes. And then at the second time, I was like, I need to do it. It's an investment. I need to go for it. And I was a bit in the mind to say, if it doesn't work after 3-4 sessions, then I'll stop, but at least I tried, So it wasn't, I would not say it was Alain's fault. It's actually probably myself. Being a bit maybe too close-minded and think I don't need this. And 13 years ago, very different topic than nowadays to say you were going to see a psychologist or sport psychologist at the time. So I would say I'll take the blame for that, not Alain's blame.
I think when perhaps I can also add something, because it's very important what you're saying, Jayson, because I think there is about trust, or about like our first impression. It's a lot about unconscious things going on, it's not just you or me. So it's about our dynamic, we have together, and of course, perhaps we were both then a little bit younger than now, but of course I'm very happy that we worked this long, and I feel very I'm very, very how do you say, like, privileged to work this long with a guy like you. But at the beginning, like, just for adding this, we have to be aware that, like, it's not just about the talk, there is so much unconscious things, perhaps that's why. So I also don't remember, it's too long ago, but perhaps we both were a little bit not 100% natural, or we were like trying to be too perfect at the beginning, like I don't know. And then I know it was always for me, it was always a privilege to work with you, because it was so natural, you were natural to me. So it felt like not like a real work, and I think that is, for me, perhaps another psychologist would say, like, no, that's perhaps too close, but for me it's how I am, and that was our dynamic, and that's why it worked so well. So that's why, just for adding some things, so it is so many unconscious things they also work with in this process of building trust that you sometimes it's very hard to find like reasons, why it works or why it didn't work, so that's my opinion. So yeah.
Bouncing back on what you said, Jayson, you mentioned patience, which is quite interesting, I think, especially in football when we know there's no patience at all. This is a tough industry. Like, as a football player, how did you even find patience in yourself while being in an industry which has no patience? This is the funny thing about it. Can you tell us more about this, having patience?
Well, basically, you find the time. There's more time than you think, and I was very intense at the start with Alain. I think I was seeing Alain like every 2 weeks. I even think so. And then with the time, we went maybe too only once a month, every couple of months, and then it became like I actually left to England, and then we only did FaceTimes every couple of months. So I would say I was patient within not being patient. I was very intense at the start because I wanted fast result. I had no time. I was 20 years old. I had to be successful as soon as possible. And I knew my mental strength was a weakness. And once I maybe found it a base, then I slowed down the process with carrying and everything. But you need patience. Like your exercise needs to be patience, or like the tools that Alain give us or give me. At the time, I had to be patient and work on some things, but the things that worked very fast, I was very happy, and I was practicing them more. And the thing that was taking more time, I was a bit less caring about it, maybe. And every time I had the talk with Alain, I was saying, "Don't forget, you need to keep training. You need to do this." And yeah, you just get into it, but. The patience you'll find it, but of course sometimes you have a lack of time because that's why I said I was 20 and I needed to be successful in those years. In 2020, 23, I needed to be successful and I had no time indirectly. So I would say the earlier you start, the younger you start mental like coaching, I think you give yourself a better chance.
Nice one. As we touched this subject several times, we used you guys use the word trust. From your perspective, Jayson, you mentioned trust before, as I said, but can you tell us more about how did you build from your side this trust with Alain as a client? With all the problems you have, you are the guy that is literally sitting on the chair and saying, "I've got ABC problems." How do you open up? Like, how do you literally trust someone you don't know at first? Like, it's pretty crazy as well, no?
Well, maybe this is why maybe I needed an extra session or an extra talk to feel more confident. But at the time I started to work with Alain was still playing in the Challenge League. So, there's that a bit of a player trust as well. I'm feeling like, if he's a teammate in another team, but like he's a teammate, so he understands my problems. And Alain was more towards his end of careers, and I was more at the start of my career. But I think that has helped to be like thinking, he's also a player. He understands what I'm going through. Alain was a goalkeeper as well. These little things made me feel good about it. So I think after it's so long ago, but of course, after when you see that person every 2 weeks and you just maybe the first session you opens a little bit and he tells you what to do and it worked, then you just start to talk more and more and you start to feel better about yourself, which is why you're going for it. But yeah, from my point of view, it was just, I think the process, the more I was going, the more trustfully I was feeling, the better I was feeling. So your trust gets bigger as well. I think talking now from my own experience regarding he said about the team and individual working on a team or work as an individual, as a player, I have noticed that it's way harder to trust a sports psychologist or a mental coach in a team than if it's a one-by-one. I had the chance to actually do a study about it, and most answers were saying that they would rather pay and have their own psychologist than actually use a team psychology, which was crazy to think about it. But they were saying what Alain actually mentioned before: how tight are you to the manager? How much you're going to tell? are you really so confident, and all the things. And it's a very tricky business. How much to trust somebody paid by the club or friends from the manager is very, very tricky. From my own experience, I've noticed that players open more to individual or like separate psychologists than actually the team ones. So yeah, that was just to add to what Alain mentioned before.
Which, as you said, Alain, may take us for another whole session, because it's actually a very interesting question when you think about it in terms of the future of the football industry. Like, how do you find a solution to this problem? Because, I mean, it's some sort of problem, right? When you think about it.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Perhaps Jayson can tell us even more, because the thing is, I know now there are a lot of clubs, they started to work with sports psychologists, but I also know that a lot of players, they have their own. So it's kind of a performance coach, There are a lot of players on top level, they have their own performance coach, not a mental, like a more physical performance coach. And they work also with one in a team. So perhaps that's the future, that the psychologist in a club is more a little bit have to connect with all the coaches they have in clubs and private, and I don't know. So for me, it's a very, perhaps Jayson, you can add something, but I don't know. That's why at the moment I'm quite happy how it is at the moment, because I think I'm very comfortable when I have this external view with an athlete, But of course, then I also ask myself the questions, why we talk in clubs about, oh yes, we're not ready mentally when we lost the game because of this, but we never train it. So that's, for me, it's also like, okay, so how can you blame something when you don't train it? So it's like, that's why. So for me, the whole discussion, it's very crazy, because at the moment we talk about stuff Jayson mentioned, but at the other hand, it's like, shit, that is something, it just should be so natural, because the mind in high performance sports is so important. So how can you ignore that? So that's, or not ignore. So just tell, like, and sorry, I just wanna mention something Jayson said before, because you were asking about how can you build trust, because when you start to work with somebody, and for me it's important. I remember with Jayson, I had a lot of talks which they were not only problem orientated, So we are talking about development, we are talking about getting there and there and there. So we had with Jayson, I remember, I had a lot of talks. They inspired me too, We were like, this and this and this, and that gave a very cool energy. And why I mentioned that, because I think I wish this philosophy for clubs too, that we say, like, sports psychologists are not only here for solving problems, they're here for development, like to get to help getting a better mindset, to get a better communication, to get a better team performance, all these things. So that's why I think we also have to change a little bit our perspective about sports psychology. It's not about always, I have problems, now I sit. So Jayson never came to my office and said, like, I have so many problems. So Jayson was always a very strong. He said, like, hey, I have this challenge, I want to do this and this, and now we team up together. And I saw my work with Jayson always as a team, like, so, okay, perhaps that can help, and that can help. So it was always about development. It's not about always like, oh, okay, I'm the victim, I have problems. So that is also something we really have to inform the clubs, because sometimes they think about that right. Psychologist is here because, now this guy went to Alain, perhaps he has a problem or something like that. And I think it's not my job. It was never the job with Jayson. It was always about development. Of course, sometimes we have issues. Everybody has issues or problems, But of course, mainly, it was about how is Jayson getting better? That was the cool questions, which I was very passionate about to work with Jayson about these things. So it's also about how we frame all these things. You know, it's not about like, oh shit, somebody has problems. So no, I want to be better. I want to get better. I want to be more energetic. I want to be more strong. I want to be calmer. Like all these things, you know, that is for me sports psychology and gives me a lot of passion. Perhaps you can feel it.
Yeah, I think we
Oh
can.
no, Jason, I need you because I think that is very important so that we have a little bit this mindset, for example, also for all the people they listen to this, you know, because I think sports psychology is much more than just having problems, you know.
Yeah, I was thinking, and I was about to say to our listeners, this may trigger some thoughts because I know, without saying anything more, that there are various profiles of people working in the football industry that are currently listening to this webinar. So this may be useful to you listeners as well, if you have any questions later on. After this interesting interaction and introduction with you, Jayson, I want to ask about being a number 2. We know being a goalkeeper can be pretty tough mentally because, as we all know, usually the number 1 plays all the games and the number 2 barely plays. I'm not even mentioning the number 3. How do you deal with this? Because it's a bit like you are being paid for a job that you are not completely doing, which is pretty, yeah, funny if I can say so, but it's pretty tough and very tough as well, I guess. Tell us more about this, please.
Well, it's a tricky one because I think as a player, everyone wants to play, or as a goalkeeper, everyone wants to be the number 1, wants to play every week. But through your career, you kind of learn to be able to also like sit on the bench, if that sounds terrible. But like I played most of the games in Switzerland. I was always considered as a number 1. And then I came to England as a number 2 in Middlesbrough for the first time. And it was very tricky because what happened, the difference is when you train and you're number 1, you keep having these references on the weekend. So if you perform well, you're like, my training is good. Like as long as I'm performing well, my training is good. And if you have a phase where you don't perform so well, you change a bit your training to get back to that performance level. If you don't play, this is where it gets tricky. So you train and you have no reference. So you train every day for 1 or 2 years and you just don't know how good you are, or like, you know, because training is something and the game is there's more pressure, as Alain mentioned before. As in training, I've met amazing players who are just training players, training goalkeepers. But then once they were stepping into the game, they couldn't do it. And that was the first time I had to do it for like 2 years, being a number 2. And it was very tricky. I was feeling sometimes like, oh my God, I'm not motivated. There's nothing to looking for. Saturday, I'm going to sit on the bench, just watch the game and go home, and that'll be it. So it was very tricky, but it helped me for later on after my career. So I obviously then went to Shrewsbury, became a number 1 there, played many games. And then I went back to number 2 to Blackburn, and I managed this time much better. Like it was really so much easier. I knew what I could do. I knew what I couldn't. I knew what to do, what to work on. And it was much more enjoyable. The first 2 years in Middlesbrough was very tricky to manage how I should train, how to build the confidence. I'm pretty sure, I don't remember, but I'm sure I had a lot of talks with Alain about this. Like, I don't feel confident, or I don't feel like a number 1. And I remember, actually, this is a trick Alain was telling me at the time. You need to tell yourself you're the number 1. First of all, we believe in that you are the number 1. We all know it's not the case, but if you don't believe first that you are the number 1, or you could be the number 1, then there's no chance. And so, things like this to build on the confidence. And then, as I said, when I went to Blackburn, it was a bit easier to manage. I think I was a bit older as well. All these things change. But I think that was one good thing. When you're a number 2 and you want to keep going or keep trying to become a number 1, I think it's easy when you say believe in yourself. So I would just say probably put like targets and just say believe first of all that you could be a number 1. I think that's more a target to yourself. So I believe I could be a number one. I feel like a number one. I'm preparing like I will gonna play Saturday, even if you don't. And I think at some point your confidence gets better. And sometimes those things, you know, your confidence develop, and then the manager might start to think, hey, he looks more confident, he looks better. And you know, these things always happen. And then for some reason you become the number one out of nowhere, and people are like, yeah, but you know in yourself that for months you have been working on it. So it has happened that when you believe or like feel it more, I think you give also a better impression to people. And sometimes not all the time, but sometimes I think the role switch and you might get a chance in that aspect. But yeah, that will be my thought on being a number two, really.
Nice one. At the start of the show, Alain, you mentioned one of the biggest problems of the clients you faced is handling the pressure. So for you, Jayson, and bouncing back on this topic of being a number two and throughout your career, how did you deal with pressure? Like, do you do, I don't know, specific exercises? I don't know, do you work specifically with your thoughts, your emotions? Do you work about the notion of faith in yourself? I mean, you just mentioned the fact that you've got to believe I can be the number one, but yeah, overall, how can you deal with pressure? What tips can you give about this?
I hope Alain will be able to help me afterwards, but for me, I remember there's obviously, for a goalkeeper, there's a kind of a constant pressure. So I always felt this as a player. Many times, if you speak with players, they're like, oh, I'm nervous at the start, and then I just start playing and I'm okay. But as a goalkeeper, this can last long. Sometimes it can go like for 20, 30, 45 minutes before you start to feel all right. You know, the pressure takes, I feel, longer to go. And then there's more the specific pressure. For example, do you feel pressure, I don't know, when the ball gets closer to you, or do you feel pressure when actually the ball is far from you and you're scared to lose concentration? So for me, it was, I don't know, I don't remember exactly what I did for the pressure, but I remember saying, you know, it was a trick of, I think it was always like, oh, just keep the concentration. Me, it was more a concentration issue, where it's like, the next action is more important than anything else. So just think about the next action. And the fact that you think about probably something else makes you forget the pressure. And I was always thinking this was a good trick. The pressure to think like, oh, the next action. I would, I don't know, catch a ball, and then I'd be like, okay, the next one has to be good now, you know, and just keep going like this, like giving, you know, self-talk. And same with like the times. I like to check the times like every 50 minutes, because I realized like my concentration level is probably good for like 50 minutes, and I might have some dips. And I was looking at the clock to say, okay, 15 to go, and then 15 minutes paid, then 2:30, then 2:45, and doing like the whole game in that way. That was a kind of a way to release pressure, and I think it's like it gives you reassurance, you know, like to help you to release the pressure. So that would be my trick. The times and the next action thing worked really well on me.
Anything to add, Alain?
Yeah, a lot of, so with Jayson, I remember we had so many cool talks about, like, you know, sometimes it's not about tools. Like now, Jayson mentioned a lot of very interesting tools, like about self-talk, about visualization, about all these things we know from mental training. But I remember with Jayson, it was so much more. So we had a lot of talks, perhaps unconsciously, as an athlete, you didn't even notice that, Jayson, but I think you know, so of course you noticed it, but we had a lot about talks about acceptance, you know, like that, okay, when I feel this pressure, it's just a normal reaction of my body, you know, that is okay. Nothing is wrong with me, you know. Now I deserve to support myself in a good way, in a way of with a lot of appreciation, self-respect, self-compassion, all these things. So I remember we had a lot of talks about also the relationship to yourself, Jayson, and I think you handle it so good, and so that was also for me always nice how we both were into this topic, you know, and then, okay, yes, I have to do this and this and this. So a lot of things, when I can add some things, was also about like control things you can't control. So we are talking about, okay, this I can't control. This is like this what he thinks or the media thinks or the coach. So, but I can control my thoughts. I can control my body language, my self-talk, my pictures I need for myself, who I want to be. So I remember we had so many interesting talks about just also general talks and not just about, okay, let's take the paper and you write down this and this, and that also was a big help, I think, for Jayson to have specific tools and strategies. But for me, I think you have to help me, Jayson, when I'm wrong. But I think our conversations about the like in general helps also a lot to create distance, to create a little bit, okay, now I can do something, we have a good conversation, and now I create a little bit of distance, and that's very nice for me. That gives me a good feeling, you know, like, so it's also about these things, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good that you mentioned me. For example, I mentioned in the previous podcast, actually, on Pluton Football, the demands are hard. It was always like mistake doesn't exist for me. You had to be perfect every time. And I think when I'm obviously worked on sort of psychology and with yourself and everything, and then I was like, well, you know, Alain, I made this mistake and I didn't want it, and just the fact somebody say, and that's okay, what, you know. And I think these things are very tricky sometimes when you're on your own as a player. You overthink and you think this was a big mistake or that was a bad performance, let's say. And then sometimes you need that a person to just say, it's okay, it's okay, you can make a mistake, you will be fine, and next game you have another game in 5 days, or sometimes in England it's like 3 days, so you don't even have so much time to think about it. And I think this is definitely a good one. The fact that you accept everything, it's okay. Don't, most of the time the things you tried or I've tried to push away, they came faster than expected it, and the thing that you just say, oh, I accept them, then it worked pretty well most of the time. So I think it's a great point.
Yeah, I would love to ask you many more questions, because I think what you just said was really, really interesting. And yeah, thing is, we are almost 10 minutes away from hitting 1 hour. So this was our goal. I mean, I still want to ask you one question, Jayson, before closing the whole webinar interaction. With 2 or 3 general questions before moving on to eventually the questions of the listeners. So going back to this notion of process, routine, habits, something I think can see so many times on social media. You know, you've got to have habits in life to succeed, blah blah blah. In your case, Jayson, bouncing back once again on what you just said, do you have, or what routine have you built throughout the years? Or yeah, which type of exercises do you use? Can you mention that helped you?
Definitely one. Obviously, that was with Alain. It was the image and the video. So like working on videos of your best actions, thinking about successful image, successful moment of your career. We worked really well for myself. I think that was a routine. I was trying to get into it all the time, to watch some highlights, successful moments. Sometimes it could have been from somebody else. It doesn't have to be from me. It was just from like any goalkeepers. Nowadays with YouTube, you can be very lucky and have millions of videos of the best saves you want. So for me as a goalkeeper, that was perfect. So I remember this working very well for myself. Video, image, imagery, thinking about success. And for the routine after, I always felt I needed to have quite a similar routine for game days. So for example, I don't know, it was get up at a certain time, have breakfast a certain time, eating pretty much the same every time as well. Everything before the game had to be quite a good routine and similar. what I felt after a while, sometimes, you know, you add things or you do things, you add things, and then you I don't think you would go crazy, but you maybe think this is too far, I don't need this. Or, you know, many players, they like to do like it has to be left socks, right socks, or silly things like this. And obviously there is no study in the world that would tell you if you put your left socks before your right foot, you know, I mean, it will make you more successful. So it's important, I think, you have a routine, or it doesn't become something too rigid and something too tricky to think, oh, if I haven't eat my pasta at 11:03, I will have a bad game, you know. I think have a routine that is flexible. I think it worked really well on me. Like, I went from no routine to a very strict, rigid routine, and then at the end I was starting to be like, no, it's okay to do this, okay to do that, and I managed much better, and it worked really well for me. It was like having a routine, but be flexible on it. So that would be my advice to people, at least for games, night before the game days, to really feel confident. And yeah, that would be my point. Have a good routine.
If you want to add something, Alain, feel free. As I said before, we are very close to hitting 1 hour. So for all the listeners, we may need, I don't know, around 10 more minutes before moving on to your potential questions, if you still have the patience.
No, I think it's super interesting what Jayson is telling us, you know, like, so for me, like routine and habits and all these things, for me, it's very important how we explain that. So because in a way you create a sense or a feeling of control. It's about you can control the situation, not the situation controls you, you know. And I think that is a little bit the goal of creating habits and routines as an athlete, that you say like, okay, in this situation, which is perhaps not very easy to handle, I do this and this and this and this. So that's why you create a kind of a, yeah, you do something with the situation, not the situation with you. And I think that is a very important thing as a mindset. So it's about what Jayson mentions about the socks and stuff. So at the end, when we think about it, it's about, because we need to do something in this situation. If not, the situation does something with us. And I think that is very important as an athlete, that we have these habits and routines, because it creates a sense of control, you know, and that leads to more confidence. And I think that is why you can see that a lot about rituals and routines and habits and stuff in football.
It's just crossing my mind right now, but when you say a feeling of control, are you indirectly mentioning a feeling of safety, actually, or not necessarily?
Yeah, it's interesting. Safety, it's always, our brain wants to be safe, you know, like in so now we dive deep in psychology. We not want to so, but it's of course, our brain is always like, okay, I need safety, I need safety, I need safety. And when we work on these habits and controls, we give that to our brain, you know. Sometimes when the situations are very stressful, of course, we need to be safe. So that is also something why I work a lot with athletes. So how to create your personal safety, you know, because I need to feel this safety in situation I feel perhaps threatened, you know, threatened in a way. It's just a football game, but our brain doesn't make the difference, you know. Our brain thinks like, oh shit, there is a predator or something like that. So now fight or flight, you know. That's why we have to work as an athlete to all these things that gives us personal safetyness, you know, and also that leads also to control, or it's like, I think these two things are together a little bit, you know.
Yeah. Thank you for your answer. I was just wondering, but I feel like it could be quite interesting to develop even in the future. Thank you for this whole conversation. As I said, I've got 2-3 general questions to close it. So I'll not waste any time. Jayson, you again. What is overall, what is the importance of being supported by a professional psychologist as a football player today? In a few words. If you have to summarize it.
If I have to summarize it, I think even if you're the strongest person mentally, and I think actually Cristiano Ronaldo, he was an example as he's such a strong mental person, like show how good he is and everything. And actually, I think posted a picture or something like a couple of years ago with him working with a psychologist. So it tells you even the best athletes in the world, they work with sport psychologist, mental coach, or however you want to call them. And I think that tells you how important it is. If the best in the game does it, that tells you, that should be enough to tell yourself like, I should do it as myself. But I would also say, I think for my personal view, it was obviously working with Alain was just, it's like a base, you know. It's like, as you mentioned before, how many times managers say, oh, we lost the game because we're not strong mentally, but nobody trains you to get there. So unfortunately, you have to do it yourself, and unfortunately, you have to invest into it and say, this is an investment for my future if I want to get better or in a higher league. And I always thought, in a way, if I do it for any reason, I don't become a professional footballer, I don't become successful or whatsoever, then I would have no regrets and never think, oh my God, maybe if I would have worked with a sports psychologist, then I would have maybe me more successful, you know? So in that aspect, for me, I know now I have done everything I could do on the training pitch. I worked hard, but also outside the football pitch, I worked hard, and then my career became what it became. But I have no regrets, and I think that would be my advice: just go for it, and I think you will never regret it because you will have given everything on the pitch and off the pitch.
Yeah, beautiful answer. And going back to what you said at first, I think it makes a lot of sense. If the best performing people in this industry are using this tool to improve their performances, like, why would you not use it? Like, it makes a lot of sense, I think. Do you have, this is, yeah, no, I've got 2 questions left. Can you tell us just a personal anecdote, maybe something that is funny, you know, between you and Alain, just in a few sentences?
Funny, I don't know, but
Something sad if you want. I mean,
I don't know. I have many anecdotes. You know, I can't tell you. I was at Middlesbrough. We had just a change of manager, and it was Ito Karanka who became the manager at Middlesbrough.
yeah.
And I remember we were talking with Alain. I said, this could be a chance for me to play here, and you know, new manager, fresh air, who, you know, I could get a chance. And funny enough, the first game, the goalkeeper got a red card, and I played for 50 minutes, 55 minutes. We lost 2-1, but I did okay. And I remember that same week, I spoke again to Alain. I said, Alain, I need to be prepared here. This could be a big game. The goalkeeper was banned for 4 games. I was like, you know, this could kick my career in England finally and get this going, you know. And yeah, I got prepared, and on I think it was the Thursday night to Friday. So like, yeah, literally 24 to 48 hours before the game, they went to take another goalkeeper on loan, because in England you could do emergency loan keepers. So, you know, all week you are very happy for like 6-7 days, you like invest a lot. And of course, when the day of the game, I knew I wasn't going to be playing, but I just not even played. I was not even on the team sheet. So he took me out completely off the team. And it's hard to take. It's hard to take when you're like 22. I was 22, 23. It's hard to take from going to think you're going to be a number 1 all week to basically not playing. And he came out of nowhere within, like, you know, even players were coming and say, oh, you're going to play finally 4-5 games. This is great for you. You know, you get that buzz around, and then literally, yeah, a few days, like a day before the game, you're not even the team sheet. So I think that was an anecdote. And I remember calling Alain and saying, Alain, this is fucked up, man. This is like not working well for me. And, you know, at the time, Alain was great for myself. He said, look, you cannot change. You've done what you had to do. You cannot change the manager's mind. Now you have to carry on, get going again. And that's what I did. But at that time, very hard, very, very hard. So nowadays it might be a bit funny, but when it happened, it was very hard to take. And Obviously in that aspect, I was very happy. Alain was there for like talking to me and said, "This is okay. You will get going again. Tomorrow is another day, etc." But yeah, so that would be. I have many more like this. But that was one of them. Was brutal from going like to play to be nowhere near the team again.
Thank you for sharing this hurtful experience, but
no, it was hurtful at the time, but now it helped me for the future. But obviously, all these experiences, obviously, like, you know, any young keepers I meet or anything like that, when something happens, I say, you will see, you will feel better in a few years, or this will help you in the future. And I actually believe so. I actually think this time helped me a lot in the future to manage things better, you know. And if the situation happens again, it hurts less, isn't it? So it's always helped to grow mentally and grow your strengths.
All right. And final question to quickly wrap up this whole conversation, but this is for you two guys. So Alain and Jayson, like, what do you think is lacking in today's football industry in terms of psychology?
So first of all, I just wanted to add a little something. I'm so 100% sure that Jayson becomes a great sports psychologist. You know why? Because I just, first of all, of course, we're friends, but second, because to be here and to talk about these like situations, it's not so easy, you know. And I think that is so cool when you have this experience, you know, and you can talk about it. And, you know, every time you talk about it, you create a little bit more of distance, you know. And I know you worked very well on these topics. So, but I just wanted to mention that it is so good, and I think future goalkeepers, they can be very happy when they can. So
Nice line.
And then second, for me, of your back to your question, I have one wish, and I think it's a very important wish, that clubs in football industry doesn't see like sports psychologists as problem solvers. I want that they see them as developers, like develop in English, I think developing. Like, so it's more about when clubs, they see, this guy, he's not here because a lot of players have problems. This guy is here because we want to become better. When we create this mindset about sports psychology in professional football, then I think it's going to be great, because I think every athlete deserves that this topic becomes a little bit like easier, lighter, not like, oh shit, problems. It's more like, wow, there's a sports psychologist here. So now let's get stronger, better, more confident. Let's get like, let's I don't know, become very calm and very confident, and very we are able to manage our communication, our emotions, and all these things. So we have to talk about these topics in professional football, not about problems. That is my wish.
That's a beautiful one. What about you, Jayson? Do you have something to say after what Alain said and his beautiful?
Well, first of all, thank you. Hopefully, I'll be one day a psychologist, and hopefully, I could help people the way obviously Alain helped me. I think I agree with him in the way that people need to change their mind on the psychology in football. And, you know, I always think, for me, because I am a goalkeeper, I always think this is an even more tricky position. I think we should be trained to sport psychology when we are young goalkeepers straight away in a club. But then that would obviously help the issue that, for example, Alain got when he got to a first team. If those players from very young, they work with sport psychologists, I don't know how young, but like, you know, a teenage time where things actually get tricky. And then they reach to the first team. It's just a normal thing. It's like sports scientists. It's like the physiotherapists. It's like, it's something normal. And you don't get those trust issues. You don't get this distance, or can I trust this person, or is he a good one, is he a bad one, you know? And I think this, as for myself, that would be a good project as a thing. I had to develop the younger players, or for myself, goalkeepers, and then you can work with them throughout. And then when they arrive to first team, it's something so normal, and it has just become a staff member, and you can speak to that person anytime, etc. So I would say that's for me a big thing, like that clubs realize that they need people earlier, and not just in the first team when the players are already probably 25, 26 years old. This, I would not say it's too late, but it's probably too late by that time already, because they're halfway through the career. And I would say that would be my wish personally, that people realize they need to invest more into sport psychology for clubs or even personal.
Well, Alain, Jayson, Guillaume as well. Thank you very much for tonight. It was a real pleasure. I think it was really interesting, and I hope that for all the listeners it was as well. I don't know if you've got something else to add possibly before moving on to the questions. Maybe Guillaume, but otherwise, I think, and I'm talking to you listeners, if you have any questions, this is the time. This is your time to actually. So please feel free to either turn on your camera and your mic, which I will see on my screen. Raise your hand, basically, like in a classroom, I don't know. And yeah, throw yourself in the swimming pool. So ask a question, you know. Otherwise, we will simply finish on this final line. And as I said, for me, it was a real pleasure. So I want to take the time to thank you very much again, Alain and Jayson, for your time tonight. It was a real pleasure. I'll be very frank. I was not expecting it to be as good as it's been, I think. It was really a very good experience. And yeah, this is it for me. Thank you.
I've got a question, Jason.
Let's go.
Okay, thank you. Hi guys. I've got quite dodgy network, so I hope you can hear me clearly. Firstly, thanks to you, Alain and Jayson, for giving us some insights in your daily job. So I've got a question for you. I work for Yverdon Academy, so I work with young players and kids as a talent manager and doing some coachings and operation stuff. And we can see in every player's pathway, especially young players and kids, that mental is, of course, the main point, especially when we have to take decisions at the end of the season, because we have players who are absolutely incredible on the pitch with the ball, but keeping with the pressure, composure as well, maybe a bit too much emotionals, and sometimes at the end of the day, that's something really negative for them. So maybe, Alain, what would be your main advice you would give to any parents, coach, or people working with young players and kids? Basically, keep your emotions, maybe. I don't know if we can use that term. Keep your emotions, and maybe how to deal now, especially when you're a kid and you start to grow up in a very tough environment with agents, scouts watching you every games, a lot of parents, a lot of coaches. So yeah, what would be your main tips and advice for them?
So first of all, what I would tell them, like especially the players, but also the parents, that this kind of how when you feel like anxious or a lot of pressure, or you're not able to handle your emotions, I will tell them it's totally fine. It's totally fine. It's just a very, very normal reaction of your body, of your unconscious mind. So for me, that is the main problem in football. Sometimes we think they have to be ready, but we're not going to tell them, okay, you're not strong enough, you're not becoming a professional footballer. So they build this muscle, on all this age. So I think for me, that's my personal opinion. Often we tell like we have a tendency to tell young players, you're made for professional football, you're not ready, or you're ready. And so that is for me very dangerous, because first we have to learn that everybody reacts in their own way, and there's always a way to deal with that, with these things, you know. So I think when we're really honest to each other, who was not 1 or 2 or 3 or 100 times anxious in his life? I'm very honest. I'm the whole time anxious. So not the whole time, but a few times. So, you know, it's just the culture we have in our society to say like, hey, you know what, guys? So that topic, we have to be open. We have to tell young players, you know, okay, when you really feel sad and frustrated at home, or you're even like, shit, I don't want to play this game, and then the parents, sometimes it's too much for them, you know. That's why it's so important to have sports psychologists on youth base, that we have to have this person. They tell them it's okay how you act, how you react. But now what's not okay is when you don't support yourself, when you don't respect yourself, when you don't have any self-compassion. That is the big topic. You can see now I become very passionate, because I feel that sometimes we have this in our society. So like, okay, he feels that the whole time, he's not ready for that. I don't think that. Of course, there is perhaps, we find personalities that it's perhaps really hard, but we know now from science, we can train a lot on behavioral level, you know. And I think it's just important that these young guys with the parents, they hear, hey, it's nothing wrong with you, everything is okay, you just have to find ways to support yourself. Would be my advice.
Perfect, thank you, Alain. And if I may ask a question for Jayson as well, more from a goalkeeper point of view, because we are currently working at Yverdon with few young goalkeepers in the academy. We are getting now to the important age, so 17, 18, 19 years old. And yeah, you mentioned before the difficulty to be a number one goalkeeper or become a number one goalkeeper. And yes, some of the young players. So imagine you're a young goalkeeper at Everton. You know it's going to be hard. You've got England's number one in the first team. I like to remind that for Jayson because he's an Arsenal fan, of course. So you've got England number one in your first team. You've got a second goalkeeper who is quite experimented. So yeah, so you can feel few young goalkeepers who are getting unmotivated at that age, or they're like, I want to leave now, I want to find another club maybe. So what you be your approach as a young goalkeeper when it's quite hard to getting motivated by that, especially at that age?
I think it's very tricky because I don't think in any Premier League club right now there is a goalkeeper that plays, I might be wrong, but that came through the academy of the club and is playing right now. So it's very, very, very tricky for a goalkeeper in England particularly. My only advice, it would be to try to stay in the system the longest as possible. So I have seen many goalkeepers that went very early. They're like, I need to play, I need to go, I need, go this, go that. I feel I'm ready. And for any reason, they play 1 year, 2 years, and that was it. And sometimes I feel the longer you stay in the system of the Premier League, or even could be Championship, as it's a good level as well, the longer you stay in there, you will find a club, whatever happened afterwards. So let's say you go till 21, 22, you're at Everton, you third, fourth choice probably by that time, you never played for the first team. There will be 20, 25 League One or League Two club will come for you because you just come as a Premier League keeper. So I would say to these keepers to be very patient. It's very hard because I remember myself being around 19, 20. I think I was with Basel first team, a third choice, and I felt I need to go and have an extra step. I need to go and play. It worked well for me, but it was very tricky. So I think the more patient you are, the goalkeeper who has the more patience and the more like the strength of saying it's okay, my time will come, and etc., and just stay into the system. I think they'll have a bigger chance to probably have a longer career. They might reach their peak only by 26, 27, even 28. I think that would be my point of view. And I've realized with the years, the more I've seen younger keepers, I actually think they start to shine now by 23, 24. He becomes younger, but yeah, most of the time I feel the ones who are coming through very young, unless some rare occasion, some rare goalkeepers, the rest always seems to shine later, and they also stay longer into the game. That's my point of view. I would say just stay into the system a bit longer, and obviously, you know, you're probably never going to make to the first team, but you will have occasion to go somewhere else afterwards.
Lovely. Thanks for that, guys.
Thank you very much for your question, Dimitri. And to back you up, Jayson, it's making me think of, and not because I'm an Arsenal fan, but of Emiliano Martinez, because I think he is the example of a guy that stayed in the system as long as possible before making it at the top level. So yeah, this was just to bounce back on what you said.
I am sure there are many more examples, but that's very true. Obviously, I knew who was Emilio Martinez for years, but loads of people probably didn't hear from him for about 3 years ago when he started to play the last few games of Arsenal, and then just got a move to Villa. Before that, nobody knew who he was. So that's a very good example. He worked well for him, and I'm sure there's different keepers that has worked as well. Sometimes they might have to pay less, but the longer you stay at the highest, the probably the better will be. The moment you drop probably a few levels or like this, and you just I would correct something between going on loan or going permanent is a big deal. So if you're in a Premier League club and you go on loan somewhere to League One, League Two, I think it's good, but always stay attached to your Premier League club. Of course, if the club doesn't offer you a deal, then you'll have to go. But if you have the chance to extend deals with the Premier League club, I would always try to stick with it and just keep going on loan, getting experiences. I actually think Martinez went to Reading and like real clubs before he actually made it. So that tells you a lot about it. He stayed long with them and he worked out well with it.
Thank you for this great question, Dimitri. So an answer, Jayson and Alain. If anyone else has questions, please let us know. And if not, as I said, we will close on this. It's always the trickiest moment, you know, when you ask people if they have questions. Most of the time, everyone stays silent. So
I'll have a question. So Guillaume, if now you would be a player, an athlete, a coach, or you know anything regarding to football, it could not even be to football, but what would you take today to think like, you know, I think this was an important point if I would be a coach, important point if I would be a player today, etc. What do you think about it?
the pressure is on you, Guillaume.
Yeah, no,
As Alain
it's my
said,
turn
take
now.
the pressure off. Take the pressure off.
Oh, really? I didn't interact until now because Jayson was managing this webinar so well, and he covered all the topics we work on and all the questions we prepare. So first, congrats, Jayson, for the way you manage this webinar. And thank you also, Jayson and Alain, for all the so interesting content you bring to us today. And I know that we could talk about that topic for hours and hours because we can feel the passion you have until that topic, and it's also so important topics today in the football world. But for the question you asked, Jayson, not sure that I understood, but you asked if I am a player.
Yeah, you are a player, you are a coach or an athlete, whatever you want. What do you think today was the key thing or key point you think this was very...
Yeah. For me, one point that I want to highlight is that today we do not have to be afraid to work with a psychologist, because I think and now it's changing compared to when you start. As you say, at 20 years it was not ordinary to work with a psychologist. But now I think we do not have to wait that we have problems, that we think we need to go to see a psychologist to work with a psychologist. I think it's important to be maybe more active and anticipate. Like, I think everyone, even if it's not in football, but in life, we need maybe to work with a psychologist, because we are always under pressure in football or at work and every day. And I can't talk for myself. Maybe also I need to work with a psychologist, and I think it will be a good way and good things to do. So that's something I want to remember, is that to not wait until the alarm to start work with a psychologist. And no, there is a lot of things, interesting things that you talk about. Maybe one thing I wanted to add is what do you think about the fact to really work the present moment, present time? Because our fears come from the fact that we think about what could happen, and we are always thinking about negative things will happen. Like, oh, imagine if I miss this space, imagine if I play a bad game, imagine it's always negative things. So what do you think about working in the present moment? Like, we didn't talk a lot about that, but about meditation, about work breath, and etc.
Yeah, I don't know, or you wanna?
Are we guys starting a new webinar?
Exactly. So that is like
Just
that,
kidding.
that will be just an opener for a new webinar, because like this, I can stop to tell you about meditation and managing our thoughts, and so. But actually, just long story short, it's about a lot about being in the present moment, you know, and so a lot about these techniques. It's about that, but I better not start to talk about all these things, because if not, we're not able to stop today.
So we have to make an appointment for a next session.
No, me, I would actually just say to Guillaume, to try to make it very short. For me, the thing that he said is very true. Is, I think, the consequence to what's happening in the future. And as a player, you can think so far. You think, if I have a bad performance today, maybe there was a scout, maybe that would have get me to a move. This maybe would have changed my life. You know, the consequences are so they can be dramatic, or like not dramatic, but like the consequences are very quick in football. They can happen so fast that I think that's the fear of a lot of players, the consequence of a bad game, just now, like a bad pass, or like just a bad performance, or a phase of bad performance of not playing. And then you think, my whole career is again questioned here. So I think it's a very interesting topic to talk in another webinar. But I think the way he said, the moment, or the present moment, is so important. And a little tool that Alain gave me many years ago was, in a game, you imagine it's like an iPad. Your game is like an iPad, and you're watching pictures. So you make a pass, is the next picture. You make another pass, is another picture. And this picture stays with you, but it's not in the moment anymore. And this was a very good trick to do. Every action you have, just think that's gone, and now it's a bit similar to the thing. Is the present moment, is the next action, the new picture, the new moment, and I think that's a good one. But yeah, I think Guillaume mentioned, I think the fear of players is actually the consequences in the future.
Thank you for this good question, Guillaume, and very nice answers as well, Alain and Jayson. It was really nice to have you guys tonight, Alain and Jayson. I will not repeat too much what I said before, but it was a real pleasure, and I would like to take just a few seconds to thank our listeners as well that have shown support tonight for us. It was, as I said, we didn't know what to expect, as I said before. We were walking in the unknown, so as it's our first time all together. But thank you very much for showing support. It means a lot. So we're trying to work hard to produce knowledgeable content. So yeah, thank you again for your support. And of course, Jayson, Alain, thank you for being here tonight. And Guillaume, you already know everything you've got to know. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Oh.
Yes, thank you so much, guys. It was a good and interesting thing. I think we could have spoke about it another 2 hours probably, but I think we covered a few good bits, and I hope you all enjoyed as well. And I enjoyed myself, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.